I was 7 when my father put a wooden sword in my hands and said the play had ended. The yard was cold, and the dew clung to the straw. Other boys stood already, rubbing their eyes and holding their practice blades, faces small and stubborn. Our teacher began with posture, not strike, how the chest must make no sound, how the eyes should fall. He struck the post and said, "Strike with the whole body." I struck until my palms split and thought the bleeding would make me fit to die. The men watched us as if a single misstep could undo a house's name. I learned quickly which silence earned praise and which answer brought shame now. We ate with rules. My mother wrapped rice and offered it with a bowed head. When I fumbled, she tapped my knuckles with a thin stick and said the house kept its order. There was no great armour in our hall, only a lacquered crest and a few bent arrows, and men came to borrow our service as if we were a tool. Even folding cloth was watched. Each small task felt like a test the elders measured with quiet eyes. Once a neighbour came to borrow a blade and spoke of service as if it were for a living thing. The elders measured his speech and smiled thinly. I kept my tongue and counted the tone of voices when callers came. There was a boy called Jiro who stole rice cakes and laughed when punished. We called him soft and used his fault to prove our hardness. We thought cruelty made us able to endure. At night his laugh under the eaves settled on me and would not leave. Looking back, the shame and the memory sit together, heavy and joined. We learned too early that showing no pity could be taken for strength by others. We made mock matches by the storehouse and praised the boy who would not cry at a blow. We told stories of small courage and named them lessons. Often at night I felt sicker with pride than with hunger, and wondered what I would offer the house in truth. At 12 they took the top of my hair and tied it in the knot that marked one who kept a line. They dressed me in a robe that did not fit and set me before a mirror of polished metal. I saw the same face altered and felt a small part of myself gone, as if something private had been cut away. My uncle spoke of ancestors, duty, and the right of a house to be kept. His voice was steady, and no one mocked. The knot at my crown felt like a seal I had not asked for. Neighbours nodded when they saw it, as if it marked me already among men. We moved through the house like water through reeds, careful, narrow. There were rules for bowls, brushes, and the way to meet a messenger. When the steward arrived with a feathered seal and a list, the elders bowed and stepped light. The children watched feet and learned the dance of smallness. I took pride in remembering each step. Pride shaped me like iron, teaching that memory could become armor in a world of small cruelties. Pride taught me to keep lists in my head. The chores done, the names of those who owed us, the hours the steward came to count rice. Those small accounts kept the house from slipping. I kept them like a ledger against the night. Fear was a teacher. A man came with complaint and a stick. They beat a retainer in the yard until blood stained the gravel, so we would learn what to answer and what to hold silent. The beaten man left and did not come to festivals again. Our teacher said fear sharpens courage like stone on blade. I learned to hide the tremor in my chest because a samurai must not show it. At night my palms were wet with questions I had no right to voice. After the beating we were silent for days. No one dared sing or laugh loudly, and even the children walked careful. I learned that pain could be a lesson for others, and that a house will break a man as easily as it will hold him. Sometimes at dusk I slipped to the river and dipped my hands in cold water. There I fished with my fingers or held a red thread charm stolen from the temple, and pretended the house was a memory I could leave. Once in a market town, a woman smiled at a peddler with a freedom I had not seen inside our fences. The sight burned like fire and followed me on the road home. The house returned when I reached the gate, but the taste of that small freedom remained, and the thought that a samurai must carry duty and a hidden self. I kept the red thread beneath my mat and felt its thin presence each morning. I promised myself to return to that river when old enough to choose my road. The memory of the smile stayed, a small stubborn light that would not go out. I entered the master's yard at 14, hands still smelling of home and a head full of small rebellions and stubborn pride. The training ground was sharp with sweat and wood smoke. Men moved like parts of a slow machine, each limb placed with care. My teacher was thin, spoke little, and watched as one watches a blade, seeing faults without noise. Lessons began before dawn. We bent the body to posture, held the sword as if holding a sleeping thing, and struck the post until the arm learned patience and the heart learned silence. Sachio matched me in speed and in mischief. We sparred until lanterns guttered and the rice cooled, then sat with bowls and compared thin scars as if they were trophies to be shown. Once, beneath a paper lamp, drink sharpened foolish pride, and we clashed with anger. The cut on my cheek stung like truth and proved I was alive. The master saw and only said, "A cut given for vanity will not save a man." His words were small, but they made us quieter for many nights after. Orders came like bell notes. Plain words passed down and answered with bowed heads. We guarded a grain convoy one cruel winter, and a peasant came begging mercy for his fevered child. A soldier urged the law, another spoke of the house's right. I had been taught to bow and keep my tongue, so I said nothing. Rumour moved through the camp like wind over reed. Men spoke low of bandits who took more than rice and of taxes that left a whole village with no seed. Those stories lodged under the stern rules and made the night heavy. We drank and spoke softer, and the master listened but never changed the work. The world outside our fence pressed its edge in, and we felt the house tighten. I learned service can be shelter and prison both, and that a blade is sometimes asked to fix things that have no answer within honour. I saw death with my own eyes once when a thief was brought, and the steward recited the offence by the gate. They beat him until he stopped moving. His breath grew thin and hollow like a bell with a crack. I had read that law is swift and right, yet to see a small body go still taught me the law is also a blunt thing. I sat on a step and pressed my palms to cold stone until the pulse in my wrists steadied. After that night, a thin silence lived under my skin, a warning that some lessons can split a heart if carried too long. Still, the yard held light and small rebellions. Sachio and I slipped to a ruined shrine to drink hidden sake, and returned with the scent of pine on our collars. Once we hid low in bamboo when a guard passed, and the breath in my throat laughed at the luck of not being found. I kept a red thread charm stolen from a temple. I hid it beneath my sleeping mat and touched it in the dark to remember there was room for a small stolen joy. Those secret things kept me human when the house asked too much. By 19, I had marched to a border where clans quarrelled and the fields had burned. We were no great army. We were a small band that moved to count the dead and take what a house must claim by right. A widow offered us tea with hands, steady though her eyes held hollows where the harvest once was. I held the cup and tasted the thin tea, and felt ashamed that our neat orders could treat ruin like a task. There is ugliness in tidying what violence scatters. Perhaps the true measure of a samurai is how he keeps his hands from the stain when the work is ugly. One night Sachio fell ill under a tree, and I kept watch until dawn, counting his breath as if it were the slow lesson of a blade's arc. The stars moved slow and patient above like the sweep of a practiced stroke. When the healer pulled the fever back and the boy opened his eyes with a private joke, my fear unbent. The training had steadied the arm, but it had not cut out the boy inside me. The house asks for a life and a face. The heart keeps a small stubborn thing, tenderness for a friend, a red thread beneath the mat. When peace came, it did not arrive with drums or banners. It came quietly, like fog after rain. The master's hair had gone grey, and mine, though still black, was rough with the wind of too many winters. The young ones called me senpai, and I found myself correcting their stance, their grip, their breathing, words I once received with burning ears. In those moments I saw the circle close. A boy turned soldier, a soldier turned teacher. Yet sometimes when I watched them bow to the post and raise their blades, I saw myself, thin, uncertain, clinging to duty as if it were a name. I was sent home for the first time in years. My mother's house had sunk into the earth. Moss crept along the stones where laughter once lived. My father's armour hung where he left it, brittle with dust. When I touched it, flakes fell like ashes. The village had changed. Fields smaller, people older, their eyes cautious as they greeted me. They bowed lower than before, but I felt no pride in it. Titles and sword weigh less when you stand among the poor. A boy asked me if the capital was as grand as the stories said, with gold gates and clouds shaped like dragons. I told him no, that it smelled of smoke and sweat like anywhere else. He frowned, disappointed. I smiled and let him keep his dream. That winter the master summoned me again. Bandits had risen in the North Hills. We rode through frost, our breaths white in the dawn. When steel met flesh, it was swift and bitter. A young thief, no older than I had been at the start, stumbled before my blade, his face a mirror of fear I had once worn. I hesitated, just long enough for Sachio, ever the fool, to take the blow meant for me. He fell into the snow without sound. His blood steamed. The battle ended before noon, and I sat beside his body until the light faded. The master said nothing. None of us did. Words are clumsy near death. After that day, the sword in my hands grew heavier. I still trained, still bowed, still answered orders, but each motion felt like copying something I no longer believed in. The old lessons about duty and purity rang hollow. I had given my youth to a name, a clan, a code, but what had it made of me? The master said once that a samurai must learn to die every day, but he never said what to do with the days that keep returning. I began to write, small notes on scraps of paper, the smell of pine in summer, the shape of a friend's laugh, the feeling of wet earth after battle. I did not know why, only that memory was the one thing the sword could not cut. Years later I returned again to the temple where we once trained. The walls leaned, the posts cracked, and the yard was empty. The master had gone to the mountains, they said, to find silence. I left incense where he once stood and watched the smoke curl upward. I thought of everything we had sworn to protect: order, peace, honour, and how fragile they all were, like paper screens trembling in the wind. Perhaps what we truly guard are not castles or laws, but small invisible things, a promise kept, a kindness offered, a memory not forgotten. Now I am older than my master ever was. My sword lies sheathed beside me, rust gathering where once there was care. Sometimes I still dream of the training yard, of Sachio's laugh, of my mother's hands. When I wake, the air is quiet and the world feels wide again, as it did when I was a boy. I no longer fear the day when I will lay this body down. The spirit of a samurai, they say, is like cherry blossom, brief, bright, and falling before it rots. I pray only that mine falls gently, and that someone somewhere remembers that I once lived, not as a warrior, but as a man who tried to understand what honor truly meant.